Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Games to Sleep To, where we have a brand new patch for the Bazaar, including the new hero Mac. As you see before you, they are available. You can play them in the Bazaar right now. They cost, I think it's 3,000 gems, and we've purchased them here, so you'll definitely be see some more content coming out for them with new videos and things of that nature of us playing with Mac. But what we're really here for are the patch notes. So we are officially 1.0 season 1. A lot of new exciting stuff, a lot of stuff that also impacts the different expansions in the set, and also just how ranked is going to work for you and things of this nature. So there's a lot to unpack here. Why don't we just go ahead and dive right into it. So at the top, as we talked about, Mac is now here, and it does cost 3,000 gems to unlock Mac. So you can purchase gems in the Bazaar if you would like. You can go up here to this top right corner, the plus button, and purchase gems. So let's look at 3,000 gems. It's the equivalent to about $30. Pretty big price tag in some ways for Mac, but you also, again, are going to be getting gems through the game. So it's potentially not going to cost that full $30 for you just to unlock Mac. This is going to come into play when we look at some of the other expansions too, and just the overall price of these different things. So you can unlock Mac, that's super exciting, which is really nice also for newer players here. So there is a discount that you get when you are purchasing your first and second hero. So Mac is going to have a little bit of a discount if it's your first or second hero that you'd be purchasing. Pretty good to know if you're just getting into the game, maybe coming from the free-to-play era and things of that nature. So I'm curious to see what Mac then costs for everyone there. I don't remember the exact discounts that were for each hero, but regardless, let's keep moving. We talk about expansions. So expansions can no longer be toggled off, which is a nice change of life, quality of life feature that I know I definitely have toggled it off on accident and then said, where are my new items? What's going on? So once you have an expansion, it's just going to stay on. We have all been sent back to Bronze 5. So the season has reset. This is season 1, so we're all climbing from the beginning back to Legend rank. I was Legend rank in open beta. Sad to see it go, but at the same time, excited to keep climbing the ladder and have something to look forward to on that front. That's also something to consider again when you're looking at these different expansions. And the first one we have is Dooley's Dualtron expansion. So it's now available through 3,000 gems, and it's tier 15 of the prize pass. So the prize pass is going to work a little bit differently now, as we'll talk about in a second. We also have Vanessa's The Gang expansion on the prize pass as well at tier 30. And as we can see here, expansions from previous seasons, including the open beta season, are automatically granted to all players after they rotate out of the prize pass. So you should have access now. If you did not purchase the different expansions, you should have access to them. And the way that you can check that is you can go to your character, you can go to expansions, and you can see if you have the expansion enabled here. And we do have frozen asset. We can see that there are all these different items for that. Now I'm going to go to the gang here, and we can see these items. That's awesome. Cool. So let's look at the expansions. Dualtron expansion, we have the Green Wasp, we have Blue Beetle, Yellow Mantis, Black Spider, Red Firefly. All these small bugs are essentially going to synergize together. They each have a clause where they say when an adjacent item hastes or slows, you do a thing, or when an adjacent item does this, one of the items to the left of this, you gain a buff on this. Essentially, you are to kind of to maximize on them, assemble them in a certain order and on your board, and they will sort of help each other out in an optimal sense. But they also are not totally bad on their own. We can see that the Blue Beetle here like freezes one item for 0.5 seconds, and then when an adjacent item poisons, you charge it. So you don't have to have all of them to be most effective with them. And additionally, we have the Z Shield and we have the Z Sword. So the Z Shield and the Z Sword are all coming from our Dualtron here, which we'll get into in a second. I know it's exciting. better Z shield. It's a decent shielding item that also freezes, and it has some cooldown reduction when we place it next to things, and it has multicast as well. So both of these, Z sword and shield, have that cooldown reduction and multicast clause because they are meant, I think, in ideal circumstance, to be next to Dualtron, which is a 30-second cooldown item, but it's also very similar to the Slumbering Primordial. It says, when you haste, slow, poison, freeze, burn, charge this 1 second. So when you use a friend, you also shield 100. So this Dualtron, it does 1,000 damage every 30 seconds, but you're obviously going to get it to go off pretty quick. So just like an inherently very powerful item, it starts at gold tier, but I have a feeling if you can get this on board quickly in the medium days, I want to say, it's going to just auto win some runs for you. With that, we also have the Satcom, so 5 seconds, haste the friend to the right of this for 2 seconds. At the start of each day, get a small friend from any hero. So that's kind of like something like the fishing rod, just giving you items from a certain quality or a certain subtype every single day. So nice little econ item, something that Dooley didn't have too much of before. We had schematics, which gave you tech items, but now we have a friend generator, which is cool. And additionally, this is going to matter with our Dualtron mainframe. So when you use a friend, charge the core 1 second and haste a large item 1 second, and your Dualtron core has the core type. So our Dualtron thus would become a core, and then all items that would synergize with a core would work well with this Dualtron. So some pretty cool items here, and I think they could be very powerful. I've seen some other creators talk about them when they were spoiled, in that not all of them are so powerful. Even looking at like Yellow Mantis is not super strong, but I think that there is a way to incorporate these into your builds, and with varying degrees of effectiveness. So again, you can unlock this straight away for 3,000 gems, which is the equivalent again to $30, or we would be using just kind of our in-game ticking currency we get through the gems. Now let's look at the prize pass. So we know that in this prize pass, it's going to be working a little bit differently. And first, I want to go into how this works, and then I'll show you where all of the expansions lie within the prize pass. So Open for Business Season 1 Prize Pass. I'll show you where you can access it from the main menu as well. You can go over here to this middle diamond shaped, orange diamond shape here on the right, and it says Prize Pass. We click that, and we are now looking at the new Prize Pass. So let's see how this works. They display it out pretty straightforward here. So each prize tier requires 500 XP, and you're going to be gaining XP more naturally through playing the game. So you're going to be getting daily challenges. Each daily challenge is going to give you 300 XP. Weekly challenges, 1500 XP. And then you earn 3 XP for a completed day in a run, and 5 XP for each milestone that you meet. So just naturally through playing the game, you don't have to do the daily challenges and things of this nature. Every run is going to contribute to the XP that you're going to be generating. And again, we see expansions join the item pool for all players at the end of the season. So for all these new expansions that we're going to be looking at, you will be getting them for free, I believe, at the end of the next season. So we can see that within this prize pass, it has different rewards for each rank, and a lot of these are looking like rank vouchers and things of this nature. I'm going to be very honest with you all, I don't know the cool quality cool type reward. I think this might be a little bit of a placeholder right now. I'm not exactly sure about that, but we can go to what we're looking for here with the Dooley expansion Dualtron. So once we reach level 15 here on this prize pass, we will have the ability to unlock. And again, we can also, if we don't want to wait and we don't want to work our way up to it, we can click the skip 15 tiers button. And this is yet another thing that we can purchase. So for $10, you can skip 15 tiers and then go to the Dualtron directly. Additionally, this is a good time to talk about the prize pass as it says in the patch notes. So again, open beta collectibles of the paid prize pass of the previous open beta season has been unlocked for owners regardless of whether the player completed the required tier of the prize pass. So basically, for the open beta prize pass, if you had that prize pass, you get all of the things within inside it. I think that's to do with you just had to have a tremendous amount of consistency in XP to actually acquire all of the items within it. So just keep that in mind. If you're playing an open beta, you will have access, or you will have unlocked the different rewards from that prize pass. And now the prize pass is now a single free track, as we saw. So you can work your way through this prize pass for free. The prize pass before had kind of a split track where you got free rewards, and then you separately could have paid to get additional rewards on top of it, paid through real money as it was. And we can see here, so the rewards for the alternative between tickets and chests. So I assume that these are going to be chests that we'll see in probably a patch, like a hot fix or something of the nature here pretty soon. And then you'll get a ranked voucher. And so our tier 15 is that Dooley expansion, our tier 30 is a Vanessa expansion, 45 is a cosmetic, and 60 is a cosmetic. So we can scroll here to Vanessa, and this will unlock the gang. Let's look at the items here for the gang. First off, we have Captain's Quarters, which is a 4-second cooldown item. You haste one vehicle for 2 seconds, charge one tool for 1 second, reload one ammo item for 1 ammo, and a weapon gains 20 damage for the fight. I think the most interesting thing for this we'll see is how it scales. So I also have Bazaar.gg pulled up here. What is this called again? Captain's Quarters. Let's look at Captain's Quarters. And interestingly, should be in here. I checked it earlier. No, okay, so it looks like they don't have all the new items in howbazaar.gg, but they do have some of the changed items that we'll see later in the patch notes. So we'll find out how this scales later on, but this item, is kind of a jack of all trades. It can work well with an ammo build, it can work well with a vehicle tool, one weapon build, all that sort of stuff. It is large, and notably it is a property as well, so it's a pretty good tag to have. We also see Sea Dog Saloon, so every 6 seconds you haste one item for 2 seconds, slow one item for 2 seconds, and it has +1 multicast for each friend you have. So this could be very, very strong if you have a lot of friends on board. It could be a very big source of hasting, and just slowing an item inherently for 2 seconds whenever you purchase it, I think is going to be powerful enough on its own to want to incorporate into different builds. We've seen like the power of dock lines and things of that nature, and Sea Dog Saloon is kind of like having dock lines on board plus you're hasting your friends. That seems pretty good. Additionally, this haste can hit itself, so that's something good to note. Next up, we have the piano. It says when you use a friend, haste it for 1 second. So it's a static item that will be on your board. It doesn't have a cooldown associated with it. And it also says adjacent items are friends. So when that item, or that first clause, when you use a friend, haste it for 1 second, but the items next to it are friends. So you could use this in like a one weapon build scenario. Something like a flagship. Every time you're using it, you're hasting it. It also gives it the friend tag, which would synergize with Sea Dog Saloon. So this piano item, I think, could be very, very, very strong, but you have to incorporate it into your build appropriately. Anyway, this is all getting me super excited. I'm just thinking about builds ahead of time. Oh man, I can't wait to play some games with these items. Now we see Sea Shadow. So this is one of the most interesting clauses I think I've seen on all the items, because it has an inherently great and impactful starting ability. Every 2 seconds, reduce the cooldown of your other items, all of your other items, by 10% for the fight. However, you also increase this item's cooldown by 4 seconds. So that's very strong initially. And I like to think about the fights in terms of every 30 seconds. After you hit that 30-second mark is when the sandstorm comes in, and each of you who are fighting start to take the damage over time. So if we're thinking about Sea Shadow, you're going to get it off after that 2 seconds. Then you have the 6-second cooldown. It's going to now 8 seconds have elapsed. It's going to go to 20% cooldown reduction. And then now that it's 8, you've had that 6 seconds, 14, and then another 10 on top of that. So you're going to be getting it off maybe like 3 to 4 times every fight. If your fight goes to 30 seconds, that can be good. I mean, 30% cooldown reduction on all your items. Wow, that is very strong. So not to be underestimated here. It's also both a friend and a vehicle. So those types matter very much, especially for like the Sea Dog Saloon, and the vehicle type itself synergizes pretty well with other Vanessa items too. So I'm interested to see how this plays. Next, we have Mr. Richardson. Every 6 seconds, shield 10. It's a small friend. And when you haste or slow in general, this gains +5 shield for the fight. I think that could be super cool. It doesn't have the aquatic type, so it's not going to work with like a jellyfish. Inherently, it's not going to proc the jellyfish, I should say. But it's going to receive that benefit from something like the jellyfish being hasted. Again, this item doesn't say you have to haste this item itself. It just sees and checks your board to see, have you hasted or have you slowed? So this could be a really powerful source of shielding. It reminds me of something like seaweed, which seaweed is obviously very powerful. It's not scaling as much as seaweed, but we are seeing haste and slow as just like generic actions that are in the game, so you don't need to have like an aquatic build specifically for Mr. Richardson. I think that's pretty cool. All right, and then now we have Orange Julian. This is a medium friend. We love the art there. Every 11 seconds, your weapons gain +10 damage for the fight, and it starts at bronze. So I imagine this scales at giving your items +20, 30, 40. I imagine. I'm not sure. And I say that because when you look at this next clause, it says, when you gain gold, increase the damage bonus of this item by the amount gained. Thinking about that, I actually retract that previous statement. I imagine when you upgrade Orange Julian, it's going to reduce the amount of the cooldown that it'll have. I imagine this will maybe go to like 10 seconds, 9 seconds, that sort of thing. But unfortunately, I can't check that right now. So we shall see. And I'm just also going to check the patch notes here. Just out of curiosity. Yeah, it doesn't look like that's in there. Okay. Next item here is shot glasses. So small item every 3 seconds. You haste your items for 1 second. It also slows your items for 1 second. And it has 2 ammo. So wow, that's a kind of crazy clause right there. It's effectively every 3 seconds you net neutral speed on your items. So if you're like a fan of Magic the Gathering, it's like I view this as null rod in the flavor text of it does nothing, and it just does nothing. However, it does proc like Mr. Richardson, where you're hasting and slowing, and thus every time the shot glasses go off, it's going to proc Mr. Richardson. I want to say, I don't know if it's going to proc Mr. Richardson for each item it hastes and slows. That's going to be something we'll have to see. Or if Mr. Richardson is just going to see that it's done this twice, unless it would only gain 10 shield every time it went off. So we'll see how that works. The next item here is the card table. So card table is a medium item. A friend gains +1 multicast for the fight every 4 seconds, and then also it increases this item's cooldown for 4 seconds for the fight. So card table, it's a cool item. You are, I think, going to have to synergize with it very optimally. I don't see this card table really fitting into a lot of builds, but I look at something like a piano that says adjacent items are friends. So what you could do is have like a single weapon build where you are putting the piano maybe all the way on the left or right side of your board, giving only one item that friend subtype, and then you use the card table to give that item the multicast every 4 seconds. So you could use this on like, I imagine a scenario where we had like a piano, a boulder, and then the card table. I think that could be pretty cool. Then the boulder is kind of like guaranteed to one-hit KO your opponent. So, there's definitely synergies here. It's up to you to figure out how they all work together, but just an option for you. And then let's see what other items we have. Old Salt Claw, so another small aquatic friend, and it's a weapon too, and every 6 seconds deal 10 damage, and says when you haste or slow, this gains +5 damage for the fight. So again, shot glasses will be synergizing with the Old Salt Claw. Inherently, it's not that powerful, but I do think that, again, if you have a haste build with something like a water wheel or with a pufferfish next to a jellyfish and you're creating a lot of haste, or even if you have, what is it, the booby trap? I believe that's what that, oh no, that's a different item. The slowing medium item from Vanessa that triggers every time that an enemy uses an item, the Old Salt Claw could get very big very quick. So not to be underrated or underestimated, as it were. I think all these items have a place. And then the last item here is Calico. So this cool cat right here, 7 seconds. Every time it goes off, it deals 10 damage. And it says when you use another weapon, this gains +5 crit chance for the fight, and it deals double crit damage. So wow, that is super strong. If you find a way to enable putting more damage on the Calico, which Vanessa is pretty good at stacking up damage, I think this is a very potent item that you could be utilizing. It reminds me a lot of Piranhas, as Piranhas have this deals double crit damage clause. But the thing about Piranhas is they also aren't increasing their crit chance alongside it. So if you could also find a way to like double up on Calicos, it is not an aquatic item, so it doesn't synergize with Jump, but you, as Vanessa, generally you're just going to have a bunch of weapons on your board, so Calico's going to get a lot of crit chance pretty quickly. So super cool. And all right, this is the gang expansion. Notably, you can also see most of these items in this Sea Dog Saloon picture. It's a really cool art over this one. Has a lot of like hidden gems and things inside of it too. Yeah, very, very excited for this new expansion for Vanessa. And then as we continue to scroll through the items here, let's go to 45. You can see you'll get the ceremonial golden rug. Looks okay. Don't have too many thoughts there. And then when you get to level 60, you get the Ring King Pygmalion. Here is this skin. Not really what I love to see in a skin, but I think it's still pretty fun, and if I got it, I'd probably use it. So another cool thing that you can work up to. Okay, and then at the end here it says, new tiers, well, it's kind of hard to see with that background. New tiers will be available as you reach the end of your tickets. So just like with the first prize pass system, it looks like when you get to the maximum amount of prize pass, it's just going to generate rewards for you. I can't imagine they'd be anything special. It's probably just more chests and more ranked vouchers. I don't know that for sure. So don't take that as gospel here, but this is what it was before. So, we've looked at the expansions here. Let's go back to our patch notes and see what else we have in store for us. So the Tempo store is now a thing, and it offers daily cosmetics and gems. So this is something new within the world of Bazaar, but we've actually had the button here for a while now. So we can go back into the client. So we click on the Bazaar button, which previously didn't do much for us. And then you now have the option to buy these cosmetic chests. So you have this diamond stash. This will be, if you notice where like the stash is on your board, this is what will be there. So the Bazaar store, how it works, you have daily specials. So players' daily specials are picked randomly from all daily collectibles left in stock, and daily specials will leave the store once sold out. So at this time, I don't know what the cost of those are going to be for each of these daily specials. I don't know if all of them are going to be 3,000 gems. And you can see here that there are a limited amount of them. Now, I'm curious to know, and let's look at this, how it works here. So players' daily specials are picked randomly from all daily collectibles left in stock, and daily specials leave the store once sold out. So it looks like there are 20,000 of these chests that you could get that are just there to be purchased, kind of like it was a physical commodity, and that there was a resource cap to the amount that were produced. There are 20,000 of them made, and it seems like once those are sold, then you can no longer get this item. Okay, I have some feelings about that, but let's keep going. So then also we're going to have some weekly specials coming soon. It says available for purchase 1 week only, and then afterward those collectibles are gone from the store, not to be in the store again. And we can scroll down and you can see that it would be over here. Interesting that it has this $25 price tag. So it may not even be a straight up gems purchase. This may be a cosmetic that you can only use real dollars on. I do not know that for sure, but that is what it looks like currently in front of us. So we've looked at the Tempo store. Notably now here, this is pretty important, daily ranked tickets. So they had this implemented in open beta where you'd get 1 ticket daily to play ranked. And then they took that away. But now, as we can see here, you have a little free ticket every time you are going to play, or once a day rather, when you're going to play ranked. So with this, I really like that change. Before, there's always this, fear in the back of my mind that I'm not going to be able to play ranked for that day just because I somehow am consistently losing to the point where I don't go infinite with my gems and chests. I have reached a point in playing here where I have been going positive with my gems and chests. I reached legend, and that was, a climb in its own right. But I know for a lot of players who are just starting out who want to get into ranked that it is a very real concern that you're not going to be converting off that 7 wins, that 10 wins every single day. So you want to have a way to guarantee that you can keep accessing ranked. So I really do like that change. And as we can see here, it's still every 4 wins, 7 wins, 10 wins is when you get those chests. So you get that daily rank ticket. As we talked about the prize pass, it is a little bit different now, but we'll see if it's more effective. I think that it is going to be at least more accessible for completely free players or players that are not wanting to buy the expansions, just because you're going to be actually generating XP per day, or per run rather. It's going to take a lot of winning, and that's where the challenges come in. So we also have daily challenges that were implemented in last patch. And those can be accessible on the right side of your menu here where it says challenges. And we'll see here that you have your daily challenges and your weekly challenges. So you can complete these each day. You can, every physical day, not day in the game, you will be able to re-roll those if you want something else. So say we don't want to learn 5 bronze tier skills, we can re-roll that. And now it has given us new challenges to complete. So something to note there. Looks like it has a cooldown associated with that. I'm assuming that you can only reroll once per day. Don't know if that is the case, but that's just what I would imagine. We'll see how that shakes out. Weekly challenges. So again, you can re-roll your weekly challenges. And I'll just look at this one here. Lose a fight to a monster. I don't want that one, so let's re-roll. And I hit the reroll button. Doesn't look like much happened there. Okay, there we go. So we have now re-rolled. These can be completed every week, and you'll get 500 XP. Again, every level is 500 XP, so every one of these weekly challenges represents 1 level. So I imagine this is really how you're primarily leveling up. These daily challenges rather. If you complete all of them, that is 3/5 of a level. And probably it'll take you a couple runs to do that. At least 2, I would imagine, looking at some of these, although they could be potentially completed in 1 run. Yeah, so those are some challenges. We still have access to those, and as we see, a number of changes have been made to them to make them more reliably completable within the time frame. So yeah, probably 1 to 2 runs you'll be able to complete your daily challenges. And here's something that I have yet to see how this actually works. At the end of combat, we now enter the replay recap state instead of a hybrid between the loot and play recap state. So I won't spend too much time talking about that. It's kind of a little bit of a hybrid system that I think will just kind of streamline the game. Before, you were just in a blank screen, which was, I don't want to say awkward, but it's just like, okay, you win, and now what do you want to do? Here's nothing. So this will, I think, just keep it more visually appealing, and then you can then click to continue, and then you'll enter into the loot state. So this change is actually, we'll see how they've coded it, but this could be very important. So before, sometimes when you defeated a monster, you could generate the item from something like a boomerang, and if you hadn't cleared out your stash, you would have lost the item from the boomerang that you would have generated. So it sounds like when we have this continue stage, we'll still have that option to sell items out of the stash, and then it will go into the phase where it would generate a loot. I don't know, again, if that is true, but that's what I'm hoping for. It's always so annoying when you just forget to clear the space in your backpack, or you create maybe like piggles or something like that, and you didn't know the piggles was there, and then you don't have the space in your backpack for something else. So that's good to know about. We'll see how that works and continue to monitor that. New content. So we have two new vendors. Two new encounters rather. There's Mandala, which is a new encounter that transforms your items into different ones. Okay. I've contemplated what this looks like. I haven't gotten the encounter yet, but I do like the ability to transform items. I wonder if they retain tiers. I wonder if they retain enchantments. I wonder if they can gain enchantments. So that's going to be something that we just have to test out. And then we also see Titania here, or Tatiana. There we go. For all my magic friends, Magic the Gathering, they'll understand the slip of the tongue. So Tatiana, new merchant encounter that sells toys. So that's pretty relevant for Pygmalion. I don't think I saw any of the toys subtypes on the new Dooley items or Vanessa. So again, this is something for Pygmalion that you'd want to go to synergize with your toy types. And here's something I'm really interested to see, the PvP board swap. So during PvP encounters, you will now swap to the opponent's equipped board. I don't know what that means. Not going to spend much time on it, but it is something to know. And then also some things here. Enchantments of on-sale loot items have been reduced in power. Okay, good to know. Freeze haste slows, more simplified there. We'll see what that means. There were some rules before where you could be permanently trying to slow like a radiant item and things of that nature. And I wonder if they have removed that. Regardless, they fixed some issues with their generation. Here's one interesting one. Lifesteal has health recovery, and so now it counts as healing. So if this is healing, this will work with items that check for healing, presumably with something like a bushel, or not a bushel, weights for Pygmalion, stuff like that. Again, we'll see if this works in practice. It might work on paper, but again, we've known them to have to hotfix some things into the game, but give them the benefit of the doubt that it works. Some encounter updates, so B1, B2 is spawning a little more prolonged into the days. Bazaar Con, let's see. I've looked over these patch notes here to try and pull out some of the more relevant ones, I want to say, or at least the bigger changes, although I highly encourage you to look at these patch notes if you want to get the full picture. Jungle Ruins on Vanessa. So now the Plunder for Treasure option no longer drops loot items. So you're going to be guaranteed actually getting like something you can put on your board, presumably, which is a rather notable change. I think that's probably for the best. Sometimes you want to go to the Jungle Ruins and speculate off getting like a silver tier item, and then you get a loot and you're like, oh wow, okay. Well, I have loot, but I now don't have anything on my board, and now I'm probably going to lose the first fight of the day. So I think that's a good change. And here's a really big one. So the Lost Crate, the open it option now gives you a medium item instead of a silver tier upgrade hammer. I think this is a very good change. It does stop a lot of the early duplication that was going on of items, which I think was just kind of overpowered. You would see Doolies try and get their bronze tier drills and then duplicate them very early on. You would also see Pygmalions duplicating matchboxes and things of this nature. And I certainly had done that a great amount. And I can tell you that like duplicating a matchbox was on power some of the most effective damage builds that you could have had on Pygmalion in the open beta through the early days. It's just pretty easy to pull off, and I think this has changed that is for the best. It sucks to not have that like fun little trick, but the thing is, if you're an experienced player and you know about that fun little trick, but the less experienced players don't know about it, they could be passing up on some serious value, and that could be really frustrating for folks getting into the game. And over here we see some updates. So I think Lich now is a little bit easier, which is pretty good. Additionally, the Blood Reef Captain, I imagine, is going to be hasting their flagship where they were not before with their Captain's Wheel. And here's an interesting one. So Mimic now has the Ravenous skill. So it's the first time you fall below half health each fight, destroy an item for the fight. I imagine this is destroy an item on the enemy's board. Don't know that for sure. That wouldn't make a lot of sense if it was destroy an item on your board. Yeah, I don't think you would want to take that if that was the case. But hey, maybe that is. We'll see. And then we have some hero-specific updates. So there are a ton of updates to items in the game. There are a lot to go through here. That being said, I think if you want a general overview of what updates have occurred, I would say a lot of items have been buffed. We see items like Pygmalion, their golf clubs, now are doing 10 damage instead of 5 damage and scaling even more nicely with the damage. We're seeing things like Busy Bees are doing more damage than they were before, Beehive scaling more. We do see some nerfs here and there to items. We'll see like Hotstone now does less regeneration, which is a bummer, but it was rather powerful. But overall, I'd say items generally have been buffed, in my opinion. With that, some notable Pygmalion pieces here is that Jabalion Drum. So the damage scaling. Now instead of when an item goes off, it gets 1, 2, or 3 damage, it gets 5, 10, or 15. This is, I think, really what this item needed. You were kind of just getting it before for the haste, and the damage was an upside. So now the Jabalion Drum is a very real item that could scale the damage of something like a yo-yo or like a Nat Lottle. So I'd be looking out for this item in your games. Also here, I think it's interesting. They have changed Ice Cream Truck and Igloo. So now they're freezing multiple items as they scale up instead of freezing one item for a long period of time. That change can go either way. I think the nice thing about when they're freezing multiple items is that it's going to proc more effectively your skills that say when you freeze an item do XYZ, or items that say when you freeze an item do this sort of thing. So presumably for like an ice club, if you had a level 3 igloo, you would get 3 charges of reduced cooldown for your ice club, or 3 charges rather. So that is a buff in that sense. Although if you're facing off like against a 1-weapon Vanessa build, you want to be able to freeze their 1 item for as long as you can. So, you know, it depends on what you're facing, but I think overall this is a good change. Also, Land Scraper here. So now this item has been redesigned, and I know that this is in howbazaar.gg. So I like the visual example. So here we see that Landscaper has been redesigned and now has a 7-second cooldown. It shields for 200 and says your shield items have plus shield equal to this item's value, and it scales itself. It says when you sell 10 items, give this plus 5 when it's at silver, 10, 15 for gold and diamond in terms of value. So this is another item that you can scale on Pygmalion, which I think is super cool. Before, you were really just always looking to do it on something like the Subscraper, or you were doing it on like a Fixer Upper and that sort of thing. So I think that's very strong. Additionally, they have changed Vineyard to be basically the same thing. So Vineyard says now, we can even look at it here. Vineyard, cooldown 6 seconds, heal 200. Your heal items have plus heal equal to this item's value, and when you sell 10 items, you scale it. So I really like this change. I think that now Vineyard and Landscraper are going to be able to empower a lot of the very small healing and shield items that you had on Pygmalion that were kind of doing nothing or impacting your board very little into the mid game. I'm thinking of items like the jewelry box. I believe it's jewelry box, right? Or just jewelry rather. I'm thinking of items like bandages, items that just fall off later into the game, some things that you really don't want to be even investing in, frankly. Just getting every gold that you spend on it, it's really not doing a lot for you. It never felt good to have those items, but you had to purchase them regardless just because you needed something on board. But generally you had them just so you were enabling something like your weights or something like your bushel. So I think with this Landscraper and Vineyard change, now you have opened up to you these builds that incorporate these small items, and they then are giving your small items or your other heal and shield items plus heal or plus shielding, depending on the item that you're looking at. So that just opens up even more builds for Pygmalion, and I think that's what we want to see overall in the game, is just more options for more build diversity. So really happy with those changes. Additionally, it kind of has that ledger clause where when you're selling items, you're increasing its value. But if you get a ledger with these items, you're going to be upgrading their value even further. Although we see here that ledger, the value gains have been reduced. That is significant. I will say it's going to make your fixer-upper scaling worse by far, but I think just having access to this pivot in Landscraper and Vineyard and using that as a build is pretty strong for Pygmalion. We also see here that Matchbox has increased cooldown, so this is probably a good change here. Matchbox was the center of a lot of early game Pygmalion builds. It may, depending on what we see here, be a pretty big nerf just because Pygmalion kind of relied on the Matchbox when you were doing non-weapon builds in the early game, but we're going to see here that some of these scaling items are a little bit more effective in like a kukri or the golf clubs, just in terms of damage that they're doing. So lateral moves there, lateral moves. And let's look at some other things here. So we have a new item, the Pitchfork. It deals 50, 75, 100, 125 damage as it scales up in item quality. And then it says at the start of each day, get a truffle. And if you have a property, get an additional truffle. I don't know if this is a medium or small item. If it is a small item, that would probably make not a lot of sense because of the damage value that it does. I imagine that it's kind of like a shovel in that it's a medium item, and then you get a truffle each day. But truthfully, getting a truffle and then scaling that in your properties is pretty strong. Just having another source of item generation on Pygmalion is pretty cool. Okay, and a nice little change here. Our yo-yo is now down 1 second cooldown. So now it's at 4 instead of 5. Love to see it. Let's look at Vanessa items. So again, a lot of different changes to the items here. We can get Cannonade more early. Here's one big one that I think is going to be pretty impactful. It says Catfish now has different scaling. It says this now, when it gains haste, it gains +3, +6, 9, 12 poison for the fight instead of 1, 2, 3, 4. So Catfish is going to be very viable poison scaling early on. A bronze catfish is now effectively doing what a gold catfish was doing before. And then if you get a silver tier catfish, the diamond tier catfish was not even doing how much poison damage the catfish would be doing. So that is a pretty big change. Means that catfish and poison builds are going to be even more powerful in the early game on Vanessa. and they were already pretty powerful. So that's a pretty big upgrade. Additionally, here we see that the diving helmet has been redesigned, and I think this was much needed. It was never purchased before, I think is more than likely the case. It says it shields 25 when it goes off, and we can probably look at this. Hopefully it has the correct value. So every 6 seconds, it shields 25. And then when you use an aquatic item, it gains shield for the fight. So 5, 10, 15 shield for the fight, and adjacent items are aquatic. A lot going on here. First impression, this is better than Barrel. Barrel is, we can even look at Barrel. Barrel is going to be doing more shield and it is going to be going off even sooner, but Barrel wanted to be in aquatic item builds. And you hit this point where you had this tension between, I want to have my Barrel, I want to have these shields go off, but Barrel in itself is not is not an aquatic item. But with the diving helmet, we can see that it itself is aquatic and it's giving your other items aquatic, which is a synergy that is very potent and very powerful on Vanessa, and it's scaling shields itself. So I'm really excited for this. Also starting at silver, again, it's not going to be as much shielding as Barrel, but just giving this clause, this aquatic clause to adjacent items can do some absolutely absurd things. I'm thinking of synergizing with like Shipwreck, for instance, where it says your aquatic items have +1 multicast. If you have the diving helmet on board and then you have a big item or you're like a single item build, all of a sudden now you have access to like +1 multicast in your item, and your Shipwreck's giving it crit chance and things of this nature. You're scaling your seaweed better, you're proccing your jellyfish more often. There's just so many different synergies that this diving helmet now allows us to unlock. It's going to take some figuring out to build around it, but I think that it could be very potent and powerful. And additionally here, we again see so many different changes, a lot of damage buff and cooldown reductions. Notably, your fishing rod is now not an embarrassment when you put it on the board. It's now has a 5-second cooldown instead of a 9-second cooldown. And it just hastes the item that it is adjacent or to the right of it rather for 2 seconds. So it's not going to gain any buffs as it levels up. But I mean, just with something like a catfish, again, that's very powerful, and every 5 seconds is much more reasonable compared to 9 seconds. Also, our katana stands, you got the katana for 2-second cooldown again. It's back. It's also doing a little less damage, but let's be honest here, we just liked seeing that thing go off. Seeing a 2-second cooldown weapon just feels good. And then they've also increased the value of lockbox, which they really needed to do. It wasn't very powerful before. Also, primordial depth charge element. Now it's called elemental depth charge. Oh man, I just like the word primordial, but is what it is. Also notably here, repeater. I think this was much needed for the repeater. It now scales in damage when you level it up. So we can look at that hopefully here. And it is going to now do 60 at silver, 90 at gold, and 120 damage at diamond. The problem with the repeater before is just once you never wanted to level it up that much. It was never really that big of a find, and it fell off quickly because it wasn't gaining any more damage. But now it does. Now 120 damage item that's going to be charged every 3 seconds when you use an ammo item. That fits way, way, way better into the ammo builds. It's still not as powerful, I think, as the, the knife pistol, but it is way better than it was before. Additionally here, Shark Claws, I think that this is a pretty interesting change. So it does a little less damage now, but it scales way more damage early on. So Shark Claws now, instead of doing 3, 6, 9, 12, does 10, 20, 30, 40. This is a very serious source of damage that you can be using. These Shark Claws are very real in the early game. Adding this much damage to your board with like a small weapon build on Vanessa could be super strong. So I would look out for shark claws in your upcoming runs here. Additionally, we see that wanted poster now is just always going to give you 1 experience, so something to know about. And yeah, let's look at some Dooley items now. Just kind of an overview. I think Vanessa, again, some really great upgrades to Vanessa's kit overall. I'm not really seeing much in the terms of nerfs for Vanessa. I think this is all upside, essentially. So for you Vanessa players, that's some good news. All right, Dooley items. So I'll be frank in saying that I have the least amount of experience on Dooley, but I still want to comment on some of these changes because I do think that there are some really big and obvious ones that needed addressing that they have changed for the balance of the game. But I'm unsure where this leaves Dooley, frankly. So I'd love to hear from you all what that looks like. So we have things like Alpha Ray, it's doing more damage, and it's scaling a little bit better, that sort of thing. What I want to look at also is like Clarence. It's going to be scaling more damage, which we love to see. We're also seeing some different buffs and nerfs across the board here. Combat Core is a little more powerful. Charcoal's slower or a little lower cooldown, does more of fire damage. We can access Claw Arm earlier on, things of this nature. But I'd say the big ones here, we see DJ Robot. DJ Robot now spawns only 1 nanobot when you purchase it instead of 3. DJ Robot before was so powerful because it gave you 3 nanobots immediately, and it kind of was like a 1 purchase combo. And let's see, DJ Robot, there we go. Yeah, so DJ Robot, again, it used to give you 3 nanobots, which meant that when you are putting it on board, it's already going to be very effective. Now you have to have the friends to synergize with DJ Robot before you purchase it. And the nanobots were very strong before too. Let's see if we can pull those up. Yeah, so the nanobots were gaining damage for each friend you had. So you were getting like a silver tier DJ Robot, and then you were putting your nanobot on board. It sees itself, I believe, so you put 3 on board, they're each hitting for 45. Like, it was very real. And then you also have the haste clause. They buffed DJ Robot to say when you use another friend, charge this 1 second, which was very strong. You basically had DJ Robot as kind of like a 1-item win con, or 1 purchase win con, I should say, because you have to have the nanobots on board through the mid game, and it was a very potent build. Now DJ Robot didn't scale as well into the late game, but on Dooley, your strategy seemed to just try and build as much damage as fast as possible and try and win before you had to get to the late game scenario. Anyway, that's a big change. Duct tape. And I know duct tape has been changed many times for you Dooley enjoyers. This one's not going to be very exciting to hear, but it has been nerfed. So it is going off a little bit quicker at 6 seconds, but now it says that when you use the item to the left of this, you are going to shield. Before, it said adjacent items, so you got 2 procs off of it, but now it is effectively only seeing 1 item when it's going to use that shield clause. So it's still powerful. It's probably still important with your shield builds. It's not a bad item, but it has been nerfed. To make up for it, they have now turned Fuel Rod into kind of basically what duct tape was before. So Fuel Rod is now renamed Defense Matrix, and it starts at silver. It hastes adjacent items for 1, 2, 3 seconds. So again, it's going to start at silver, so we're not going to see it at bronze. And it says when you use an adjacent item, you're going to shield 5, 10, 15. So let's see if we can see that. Is it already under the new name? Defense Matrix, it is. So this item here is now the new duct tape. It is bigger on your board, but it is also adding haste. The problem with Defense Matrix is that it had an 8-second cooldown before you were doing that haste. And before it wasn't a good item. I don't know that I've ever seen that item used effectively. But I think that defense matrix is now something you're going to want to be looking for in your Dooley shield builds, so keep an eye out for this. Additionally here, we see that the Ice 9000 returns. It's a cooldown 9. Let's see if I can... 9,000. There we go. So this little guy returns. Cooldown 9 seconds, poison 9, freezes items for... freezes multiple items for 1 second. And it says, when you freeze, this gains 369 poison for the fight, depending on its tier. This item was pretty strong before. It's not game-breaking by any stretch of the imagination. But the interesting clause here is that it says when you freeze. So this is going to see your other items freezing, and thus this is going to scale your poison. We can also think about the lizard, the monitor lizard. This was another premier poison scaling item. It's gone through many iterations, but it's also that 9-second cooldown. It's going to poison. So you now have multiple ways to scale poison with Dooley that I think could be very potent. This, again, the Ice 9000 was in the game before, but it's back. And yeah, if you were trying to go into a poison build with Dooley, now you can go to a friend shop and potentially find the Ice 9000 or medium item vendor and look for this, and that'll be pretty nice for you. Okay, other things here. The motherboard has been redesigned, so let's look at that. Motherboard now, I believe what it did before was it gave damage to your core. Now it says cooldown every 5 seconds. It hastes adjacent items for 1, 2, or 3 seconds. And it says when you use an adjacent tech item, charge this 1 second. So that could be pretty potent, working with your railguns, hasting your railguns, or just hasting in general your tech items, or just getting more procs of items going off in general so that your core goes off sooner, things like that. So I think motherboard, you know, I'm not convinced that this is very strong, especially when you get it at silver. It's only hasting your items for 1 second. It's adjacent ones at that. But I think that it could be something that you put into your build to sort of bridge the gap. But that's my initial take on it. I'm willing to certainly revise that later on. Nitrogen hammer has also been redesigned. So nitrogen hammer. We saw this at the Frost Street Champion before. Ooh, we can pull up. But now it's a cooldown every 10 seconds. Just make sure that this is congruent with this. Looks like it is. So yes, nitrogen hammer every 10 seconds. We're dealing 200 damage. We're going to freeze one item for 1 or 2 seconds. And it says when you freeze, charge this 1 second. And this gains 100 to 200 damage for the fight. That is a real win con right there. Not only does it get charged, but it also scales damage, and it's freezing. So the nitrogen hammer is very real, I think, at this point. It reminds me of something like the Ice Club that we see from Pygmalion. This is a pretty strong item. It does start at gold, so you kind of have had to have a freezing build set up before this to really maximize off of nitrogen hammer. But if you do have a little bit of freezing, like the isocoric freezer, things like that, we're getting like little freezing items here and there, coolant, things of that nature, you can now transition into nitrogen hammer. This is like a good backup build that if you don't have anything going for you, you can look to get like the nitrogen hammer, and then you have a very viable build from there. So it goes also from the Frost Street Champion. So that is, can look at them on day 10. That is this Yeti looking fella, Frost Street Champion. We see that they have the new nitrogen hammer. Okay, Pure Conditioner also synergizes with that. We also see here that the railgun got a bit of a buff as well, so it's doing even more damage. It's now doing 50 more damage at gold and 100 more damage at diamond tier, so good to see. Remote control going off a little bit faster. and the Uzi is going to be doing a little more damage, has a little less ammo, things like that. All right, and we're getting close to the end here, but we're now looking at Mac items. So again, Mac is the new hero that you can access in the Bazaar. Mac's full item list, I don't know if the full item list is up on howbazaar.gg, but in the coming days, we'll certainly be seeing a lot of Mac play here on the channel and elsewhere. And it's hard to assess these items. These are items that were already in the pool before, so it's worth taking a look at. Something like a Fireclaw. So now it starts at silver tier. Fireclaw could potentially be very important to your builds before, as like a way to go over the top with your fire damage scaling. So now here's the really important part of Fireclaw. It says this item has plus burn equal to 50, 75, and 100% of the burn of your non-Fireclaw items. So that's saying it gets half, then 75%, then 100% at silver, gold, and diamond. So you have to scale this up to diamond for it to be at that 100% buff. I think it's a pretty big change. I have a feeling that's to do with Mac's other items, and this makes me think that Mac has some burn items that would put Fireclaw over the top and make it a little too powerful. So just keep that in mind. This does not work how it worked before. You have to scale it up to diamond to get it to be at what it was doing before. Also, we see now that the fossilized femur is now called Magnus's femur. If you weren't familiar with that item, we can now look at just the picture of it. This Magnus's femur is available from the Oasis Guardian, who we can look at on day 8. It was this big rock person here. Magnus's hammer. Magnus femur, rather. Magnus femur. It is a very good item. It is an item that you can get on Vanessa or Dooley or Pygmalion that works really well with your slow builds. It's kind of like the perfect win con for those builds. It says when you slow, it charges 2 seconds and it gains damage equal to the different levels for the fight, or it gains 25, 50, 75 damage for the fight. So it was very powerful before, and if you got this, you could build your entire run around it. It is now just called something different. So it also has gained the relic type, but it's good to know that it is one of Mac's items, I think is the biggest thing here. Being able to see that, we are going to assume that there are some slow items in Mac that can enable that. And also, I think two ones to talk about here. So the poppy field is now at bronze, and it says when you use a weapon, you poison 4, 5, or 6, and it says your weapons have plus damage equal to 50, 75, 100% of the poison on your enemy. So it got the Fireclaw treatment, where now it is providing a static buff to your weapons, but not as powerful as it was before. That being said, I didn't see a lot of like poppy field item builds, but it still was very powerful. I think just kind of underexplored. It wasn't very accessible before. You had to get it through one of the monster fights or Pearl's dig site, or I think even like you could get it through the poison, get a free poison item encounter. So it's just not very consistent, but it is on Mac. It is a Mac item, so good to know. And then the runic double bow. This is an item that you could get not consistently, but I want to say uncommon. You could get it uncommonly. It starts at silver. It has a little more increased cooldown, crit chance, so it doesn't have any innate crit chance, and it now does a little more damage early, but not later, and it deals double crit damage. So the reason I bring this up is because you can get it off a couple different encounters and different shops. Like there is an encounter where you can get crit chance, you could get a runic double bow from that, things like that, and also from Boss Harrow, that monster fight. So just know that it's a little bit different, I should say, a little nerfed is what I want to say too. And now towards the end of this, so Other items, cinders. It starts at bronze tier and says when you sell this, your leftmost burn item gets 1, 2, 3, 4 burn. So basically, it just starts at bronze now and then scales up. Before it started at silver. So you could never, when you got a diamond tier cinders, it would give you 3 burn. Now it will give you 4 burn. Is kind of the big change there. Same for extract. We see that has gotten the treatment. And then same for sharpening stone. So all of those generic damage modifying items are now starting at a lower tier, and they can give you a little bit more buff, just because their diamond tier is now going to give you a little bit more. Additionally, here we see that some skills have been changed. I do think it's noting that your improved toxin skill, your initial dose skill, your final dose skill, your burn items on your fiery skill, immolating spark, final flame, basically a lot of the skills that you get early on from bronze tier vendors that you really want to look for have been nerfed. Additionally, you could get like gold tier initial dose, gold tier fiery. Yeah, now these are doing less for you. Just good to keep note of if you think that you click these and you're wondering, wow, I thought that these were more powerful than they were. Well, you're right. They were more powerful. Now they're nerfed a little bit. Still, again, things that you're going to want to get if you have your different associated runs for your burn, poison, burn or poison builds. Just keep that in mind. But yeah, not too big of a change, but something to be noted. Okay, so that is patch 1.0 season 1. I have a lot of feelings about it, and maybe I will go into that at a later date. My initial take is very excited for the new weapons, very excited for the new character. I think that's going to be super fun. Overall, just I'm really happy with the fact that the game is going to be getting more. Bazaar is, currently one of my favorite, maybe one of my favorite games of all times. The fact that it is getting consistent updates and given consistent attention, I think is awesome. Feeling pretty good about the Bazaar here. Am interested to see how it all kind of transpires from here with their different payment systems, but I think overall the Bazaar is still looking to be in a very healthy spot. With that, I appreciate you all sticking around and looking over these glorious new patches. Excited to see what you all think with them. And I'll be putting out some new Mac content soon, and very, very curious to see what those games will look like. But anyway, thanks for joining me. And if you are not asleep at this point, there are many more videos for you to check out. And if you are asleep, I wish you a good night.